happy as cold?
It's pretty good. They have come in hot. They're just worried.
5 seconds, we should be good.
It's been a hot.
We're good.
Okay. It is 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Catherine, would you like to start with the pledge?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Tasia, would you do the roll call, please?
Bruce Belargin,
I'm here.
Katie Thurman,
Here.
Bob Gunther,
Here.
Patty Jo Forsberg. Here. Catherine Cranston.
Here.
Lori Belargin,
Here.
Roxanne Kendall.
Here. Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, urging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Our core values are listed, protocol reminders. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mark, Superintendent's report.
Got several items on here, and I'm again not going to go through all these attached documents, but when we get to them, if there's questions that you have that you want to talk about, let me know. We'll discuss them. But first of all, I'll start out with the construction update. As you drove around in here, you can kind of see that things are coming along very nicely. Anything that you see out there that is brown right now, by the end of the week will be green. All of our blacktopping will be done by the end of this week. So the grounds by the end of this week should be, all the concrete is poured. It's going to be concrete, but it should be looking like a really nice, clean site. The only thing we got left on the site is fencing around the ponds. We'll encompass the elementary pond, the one by the middle school. Instead of encompassing that whole pond, we're going to run along the sidewalks along I and up the new drive, and that rather than all the way around. If they get up there, they're up in areas where they shouldn't be back there. So again, it'll save us about $15,000 by not encompassing that whole one by the middle school. Walk through the buildings today. Every day you go in there, it's remarkable. They're already unloading pods that were packed up into the middle school, into the teachers' books and boxes and things like that were packed up. They're putting those into the buildings. A lot of the floors are waxed already. They're finishing them off. The shop wings, they have to spray the epoxy flooring in those shop areas. Again, by the end of this week, they're anticipating being, almost done. I think next week they're talking about punch list. Bruce, is that what?
This week.
This week they're going to start doing punch lists, and they want to do that before we start moving stuff back in, because when you move, what's that?
I say, have they talked to any principals? Are they involved in any of those punch list items?
No, just George at this time. I don't think they know anything about that, or if they will be involved with it. But we have to have someone from each building on that. But we're getting really close, So maybe that 31st meeting we probably want to do a walkthrough. We'll already have staff in the building and that, but they'll be clean. As of tomorrow, I think the elementary school will be complete with all the fire alarms and what have you. And so I was just talking to Pam about possibly people could get in the building next Monday. However, the air conditioning won't be hooked up for, they just set that big unit the other day, and that was the only holdup. And right now, as of today, there is nothing to hold us up, nothing that's standing in the way of, unless there's a natural disaster of some kind, of getting these buildings done and occupied on schedule. Bruce, anything that you took away from the meeting today?
Nope, no, the only holdup was some of the air handling equipment, and that's all here, and they're testing and balancing, commissioning that stuff the next 2 weeks to make sure the air was good, but we're That was the last item, COVID related, we were waiting for, and that's
Yeah.
here. So-
And Bruce was pushing pretty hard on that with Randy and with the team tonight about, you know, on one hand, you know, we couldn't have had better timing for our ventilation systems. I mean, everything is new, top of its game, working, but, you know, right now it's schedule. Get us in there as soon as possible, make sure the commissioning, so everything's balanced and working right, because that's another chore is, just because we have the equipment in there doesn't mean it all meshes. It takes a little bit of time to get that all working together, but, right now we're, you know, knock on wood, you know, I don't know what we would have done if we didn't get out early and get this thing going, because it would have been tight. It would have been really tight. I don't think we would have saw the savings that we had, because they would have had a lot more people on this job. So, and budget-wise, we're still good. You know, we've got that $1.2 million that we haven't touched, and plus we got about another 400 or so in interest earnings, so we're gonna be roughly around that $1.5 million under budget. So that's, again, knock on wood, that's good. Anything on construction? We'll just plan on a walkthrough before that 31st meeting, if that works for the board.
So we're talking about 5:30?
Yeah, whatever,
That's what time the other two were,
Yeah.
correct?
yeah, we'll just plan on that, okay? Any questions regarding, okay. I want to talk a little bit about fall sports, because there's been a lot going on with WIAA, and, you know, Trent's been on top of that, and a little bit about how we fared in the summer program also, so I'm just gonna ask Trent to offer a few comments.
Yeah, so last week on Friday, the WIA Board of Control met. They actually held it in person over in Stevens Point, which was the first time that they had done that in a while. Some of their members joined virtually. It was really interesting because, you know, last week you had the Big Ten conference at the college level shutting down their fall sports. So the natural, you know, question is, how's that going to impact local high schools in our region? And Dr. McWine, who's from UW-Madison, did a phenomenal job of presenting on kind of the difference between how it impacts college athletics right now and how it's also different at the high school level. And also talked about the mental health impact that the school closure has had on kids. They did a study last spring on that, so he spoke to some really interesting things. Ultimately, the WIA approved they called it an alternate fall schedule option. So what that's allowing schools to do who can't participate this fall, that's allowing them to offer their fall sports in the spring. So what will happen now is there's a traditional fall timeline here where schools we started cross-country, dance, cheer, and girls golf today. So you have your fall sports happening now, and then there's schools who can't offer fall sports, so they have an opportunity in the spring to offer their fall sports in between the winter season and the spring sports season. So what that ended up doing is the winter sports season actually got condensed a little bit by a few weeks, and the spring sports then got pushed a little bit later. So our spring sports, everybody will start April 19th, with the exception of girls soccer. They will start April 26th. From a weather standpoint, that's good for us because we're starting a little bit later, but they'll actually go further into June. You know, I feel for the schools who can't participate this fall. I think that puts their kids in a tough spot when it comes time to that spring fall season. From the standpoint of there's an overlap between those fall sports and the spring sports. So you could have, you know, for example, boys soccer going on and baseball going on, or football going on and track and field going on at the same time, and that could create for a lot of difficult decisions in juggling. The other part with that is that spring-fall season. I know it can be difficult to follow, there's a lot going on. They're also not offering like a postseason tournament for that, so it's just a straight X amount of weeks to play games, no postseason, where with this current fall season, the WIA will be developing a culminating event that hasn't been defined as to what that will look like. We've heard anything from like a regionally based culminating event to some sort of further tournament. So those details are still being hashed out. After their meeting, they sent their they call them fall considerations to the schools at 10:49 a.m. is when we got those. So we got those considerations or their guidelines, And we turn around and we start our fall sports season today for cross country and girls golf, which are sanctioned by the WIA. So we spent a lot of the weekend looking at those considerations, kind of developing sport-specific plans for all of our sports that started today, and then just general information as well for student athletes. So information, it's not coming out, I would say, as quickly as I would typically like, but we're getting a lot of stuff sent to us, and to digest that, turn around and get it out, that just takes time to make sure we're making the best decisions and getting that all out. So like I said, low-risk sports started today. Moderate and high-risk sports, volleyball, football, and boys soccer start September 7th. Middle school sports start on September 8th, which is the first day of school. The Middle Border Conference, I know we've shared it earlier on that we've shifted to more of a conference-based schedule, so we're competing against only Middle Border teams for the fall season. We've actually created some unique non-conference games against Middle Border schools. So like for volleyball, we might be playing New Richmond and calling it a non-conference game, but it's just to get us more games against similar schools. There's different sport-specific adjustments that have been made at that level as well. We've been in communication with the superintendents. Probably the most asked question that I'm fielding right now and our coaches are fielding are fans gonna be allowed to come to games? And honestly, at this point, I don't have that answer. We're relying on guidance from DHS, St. Croix County to kind of get guidelines and recommendations that. So that's further discussion that'll be happening. You have schools in the conference that are wanting to not allow any fans into games. And then you have schools that would like to have parents and grandparents be able to watch their player play. At a minimum, we've been told that any indoor like volleyball games that are happening, every school in the conference is set up to do live streaming. So if there was a fan restriction on attendance, we would be able to live stream the varsity games. At a minimum, outdoor football games, we believe every school would be able to live stream football games as well. So we would have those options available. So as you can imagine, a lot of logistics that we're all communicating with at the conference level. Also of note, and I think I shared this in a weekend update, our drama department, we've been in communication, and we're actually, with singing right now, we're actually gonna shift the musical to the spring. We're gonna aim to do that in the spring. Typically, we've done a musical in the fall season and then done a play or drama in the spring. So by moving the musical to spring, we're hopeful to possibly offer some sort of drama activity for kids that would be their interest. So it most likely wouldn't be a full-fledged play, but some sort of drama activity offering for kids. And robotics, that's still slated to start once school starts back up as well. But again, I know I said it, I probably sound like a broken record, having kids come onto campus for summer workouts at the beginning of July and open gyms, that did not get old for 1 second, and seeing kids back today and practicing with their coaches, honestly, it doesn't get much better than that to see kids engaging in those activities. So.
Anything about the summer programs?
They've been going very awesome. Our coaches and our kids have done a great job.
Great. A couple other things added to Trent's piece there. Superintendents, we were allowing New Richmond to come back into the, I think just for football, isn't it?
They're in for every sport. This year, the WIA created football-only conferences. They were supposed to go to the Big Rivers, but it's sounding like they will come back in for football.
MBC just for football for this year. And then kind of the buzz today was on the soups line was they're talking about fans, outdoor sport, like football, soccer, 4 indoor sports, you get 2, so like parents can come. So that's the kind of things that are going on right now that we're trying to wriggle out there. So anything else? I gotta compliment Trent and his coaches, walking around, watching these kids work out and what have you. I mean, they're sanitizing, they're cleaning, they're wearing masks, they're doing what they need to do to keep us open. And that's what we have to do. Moving down the list here, one thing, I do have to share with you that the MDC soups, I mean, and it's not just us, we're very frustrated because you probably sense that through the weekend updates, some of the communication, that we feel like we're getting pushed from Milwaukee, Madison, the bigger schools to end up virtual. And all the plans we're making now, again, we're all pretty typical and similar in what we're doing, but we're just not getting the guidance or the help. You know, we've been told that for the last month or so, DHS was gonna come out with, you know, here's what you need to do. And that then, you know, county health would, you know, it would filter through them and then come to us. And I was just on with county health today, and, you know, they hear nothing. They, you know, they can't share anything with us because they don't hear anything. All they can do is give us stats about, you know, what's happening in, you know, in St. Croix County. And again, we're moving ahead and making all these plans, knowing that if this comes out next week or what have you, you know, they could be restricting us on transportation, they could be restricting class sizes, things that would just push us right into virtual because, you know, we just don't have, we can't break down. Right now, we're either face-to-face or we're virtual. That's just the way we are right now. And that's, the rest of the soups feel the same way. And again, it's just frustrating that, you know, we're not getting that kind of guidance, you know, from, and even DPI also. So again, I just keep saying be prepared because all the best, you know, best plans we make may be out the window, you know, in a matter of a couple of days. So as far as our numbers and that we got from county health today, you know, I think they're seeing things tick a little bit upward, but you know, in our area right here, you know, we're still better off than we are around the bigger cities and communities. So, you know, knock on wood there. The remaining items I have on here, you know, item 4, face covering protocol. You know, I put that out last week, and you know, when you look at the governor's order and the opinions of some in healthcare with that order, they believe that, you know, you should never take your mask off inside. You're looking at that, taking, you know, Dr. Lisa Ramsey, you know, she was here talking to us. You know, I tried to make a common sense document out of this that is realistic. And so that's what went out to the employees. We'll also this next week in the scoop have some guidance for parents and for kids as far as, you know, what direction we're going with there. And again, knowing that this is all subject to change possibly, who knows? But for what we know right now, that's what our plans are. Item 5, you saw, I think it was in the scoop, or no, the reopening plans weren't in the scoop. Open house plans were in the scoop. But the reopening plans, each building, you know, I asked them to come up with protocols of how we're gonna operate in each building, so those are out there for people to see. The open house plans, those were in the scoop. We updated the reopening plan, and I'm not gonna go through that because there's just very few changes from when we developed it back in June. Things like, well, the whole face covering piece, which is mandated now. We looked at the locker issue, and that'll be a student choice if they want to use lockers or backpacks. The principals are going to try to regulate how many kids are out in the hallways at certain times and accessing the locker bays. So we'll try and control that way. Before we just said we're not going to use locker bays, but now we've backed off on that because of the mandatory face coverings. So again, there's just some very minor tweaks that we made to that right now. I'm anticipating that if we get some really tough direction from DHS, I'm probably going to want to get the reopening group committee back together again and start looking at, okay, you know, are these mandates, is this guidelines, how do we want to look at that, and what kind of recommendations do we want to make, come to the board on the 31st, say, you know what, here's what we're seeing, here's what's changed. So, you know, right now with the information we have, the reopening plan stands the way it is, and that's what we're recommending, knowing that if they come out, you know, DPI and DHS come out with something different, we're going to have to change. So, I think that's all I have on mine, unless there's any questions about those documents that we have. Yeah.
I just have a question, and it applies to all of them. So, if a student comes in with a doctor's excuse because for whatever reason they can't wear a mask, what is the plan?
But typically,
been, well, what we talked about is that if we have a doctor's note, we come together for a meeting and we look at how we can best support that, either through a 504 plan.
To accommodate them in
Yep.
some way,
Yep.
while still maintaining the.
All figuring out how to follow everything else. Yep.
And it's the same with staff too, and it might be accommodation, maybe a shield, anything,
Yep.
you know, we have to make accommodation, but we're gonna require a doctor's note for students and staff if they can't wear a face covering.
Well, I appreciated the details on the face mask protocol. I thought it was really well done. I don't know who wrote it, but it was understandable. And I actually read it out loud to a few kids, even all the way up to high school, middle school. I read it out loud and everyone said, I don't care, I'll wear a mask. I'll do anything to go back to school.
Yeah.
They don't, I don't think we're gonna have a big problem with compliance. They are so excited to come back. Every one of them, from a second grader to a 10th grader, said, I don't care, I'll wear a mask. They are just so excited to come back to school.
You know, that's the three things: washing hands, wear a mask, and create that physical distance. And again, that's our challenge as we move back into these buildings, especially the elementary. You know, the middle school and high school isn't gonna be that tough because there's nothing in the buildings now. So we're only gonna bring back in equipment to maintain that physical distancing. Tough part is elementary, we gotta start taking things out and storing them in these classrooms to create more distance. And you know, it's what we have to do. We just have to change our teaching strategies, and you know, if we don't, we're not gonna be open. It's the alternative. So,
So could the accommodation for someone who is unable to wear a mask, could the accommodation be distance learning?
I guess it could be part of the conversation, yes, but I don't know if it would be something we would.
you know, talking with our attorney, the threat of, you know, I think it was it River Falls that said, you wear your mask 2 or 3 times, you're distance learning. You can't do that, that's discipline. And, you know, that's an option. I believe that would be an accommodation, and again, like some other alternative shield or what, it depends on, it's really gonna be subjective to, you know, the situation, who the student is or staff member, what have you. You know, I think we've got enough types of barriers we can use to accommodate, you know,
Well,
that.
Dr. Ramsey said when you asked her that question about wearing a shield, she said if you're wearing a shield without a mask, it does no good.
Well, it's better, I guess to me it's better than nothing, but I think there's levels of accommodations we can develop, but I think it's really gonna be situational on who and where they are.
But with that, does it meet the ADA accommodation?
Well, that's why we would need to look at 504
Yep.
or whatever to support the accommodations that would need to be made, because you're absolutely right, that's what will come in.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
it'll run into ADA.
Okay.
Yep.
So are you asking if distance learning meets the ADA?
Yeah, yep, and she said that it'd have to go through the 504,
Oh,
and
okay.
depending on each person, what it is, so.
Did anybody else have any questions on the reopening or on Mark's reports?
I have a question. So in the stakeholder input, in the reopening document, and we surveyed staff, and the results of June 2020 are listed here. Has much of that changed? We heard more concerns from staff that we should talk about, or how is staff feeling about the in-person learning and their general concerns on that?
Well, we've had a few contact us about, you know, possibly taking us up on that leave arrangement. We have, I think, 2 people doing that now. We have a 3rd person that is looking, you know, at doing that also. Otherwise, we haven't resurveyed the same question again. You know, to me, the closer we get to the opening of school, you know, anxiety is going like this year. You just know it is.
Mhm.
You know, it's, you know, and for us, we're trying to take one step at a time, you know, as we move forward. But you know, even from that first survey, it was almost 50-50, you know, masks, no masks. I myself haven't heard anything since the governor came out with this, you know, people say, I'm not wearing this, I'm not doing, well, you know, do what you want, but if you're not wearing this, you're not coming in our buildings, you know? That's just the way it is, but, you know, I don't know if building principals have heard anything.
I wouldn't say I've heard like anything saying like I don't want to come back, but we've been really, give us your ideas for how we can make this work. So the open house ideas were done, like, what would you be comfortable with from open houses? You know, how would you best like to come back? Like, we're all doing a staggered start at the beginning of the year to have fewer kids in the building. How are we gonna plan for that? So, and we've all sent now already 2 weekly updates. So we usually send those during the school year, not usually this early, but so we've been trying to push out as much communication, and I'm getting emails and text messages, and that's fine. And I said, just contact me whenever. I might not have the answer, but I'll try to figure it out. So we've been trying to just be as open and transparent as we can, and being the first ones to admit, and I'll just speak for all three of us, that we don't have all the answers,
Right.
but we're gonna do the best that we can. And I want their input. I'm gonna meet with some teachers next week to plan our first 2 days, because I don't wanna plan it all, I wanna make sure we're on that same page. The hardest part is not being in the building to see logistically yet, but we'll get there, so.
Well, that sounds great.
And that's, like today, you know, we met most of the morning this morning and planning out our fall workshop days and how this is gonna, it's gonna look totally different than it has in the past. So it's just, everything's based around physical distancing, keeping kids and staff safe. So again, to answer your question, I don't think anything's changed in the survey, but I know people are a little more anxious the closer we get, and
When we had that, and the three of you who were there at that, community meeting, I don't know if that's where it was said, or if it was in a document somewhere that I read, but I thought there was talk about having that, community group get together every 6 weeks. Does anybody remember that?
It was not getting together every 6 weeks. It was specifically the district looking at our protocols every 6 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
but we did mention that there's a possibility we might want to get the group back together again, and from
At
my,
some point.
yeah, and I think if DHS comes out with something that's really something, we need some heads together on this, then we'll get them back together. But let's just say they come out with everything that matches what we're doing right now, there probably isn't a need to get the group back together again.
And I looked at all your building reopening plans and your open houses, and I can see that they're all a little bit different, so I can tell that you're taking the input from your parents. I think that's great. I love how you're having, just part of the kids come back on Tuesday and part of the kids on Wednesday, and then to make those groups smaller. Looks like you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much. I know you've been putting in hours and hours. Thank you.
And I heard lots of positive from parents on the setup.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, then if there's nothing else for the superintendent's report, financial reports, is Dave going to present, or does it depend on if we have a question?
I think it depends if you have questions, he's in his office.
Did anybody have any questions on the financial report? Will, Dave probably already told us this, the quarterly report, will that be after the audit?
I believe so.
All right, if there's no questions on the financial report, open forum is next. Neither Mark nor I have received any request for public comment, so we can go on to educational delivery and learner connectedness, the student handbooks. We reviewed these at our work session.
Can I just make a motion to approve?
You certainly may.
Can I make a motion to approve 4A 1 through 4?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. District administrator goals.
quick comment on that. I have to apologize, I had 0 time this last week and this weekend to get to this. I finally got to it this afternoon, and we put out a revised, just cleaned up version of what was in there.
This afternoon?
Well, it was sometime around noon, I
Oh,
think, it went in there.
You just took draft off it, didn't you?
And it was just really cleaning up,
Red
you know,
ones.
because it wasn't a draft form before, and there was a couple pieces just with
The timeline.
timelines on some of the goals and that, so it just sharpened them up.
Did you come up with any ideas for the student achievement goal?
No, we talked about that, and even at the state level, we still don't know what they're gonna do with testing, and, you know, we know ACT isn't gonna go away, but we've been spending so much time on our reopening things and that, you know, Trish and I haven't sat down and see, okay, what's gonna show student gain? What are we gonna use? You know, what's gonna happen? You know, no, we just don't know.
So when do you think we should revisit it then?
Well, I think that goal, we could revisit it monthly, you know, we just haven't had a good chance to sit down, so what are we gonna use to show student gain this year? And then how valid will it be? You know, one of the goals that, you know, one of the pieces in there, the indicator on ACT, I mean, that's, you know, that one's kinda solid, you know, we're hoping that, you know, we showed growth of over a point, I think, this last year. And, you know, we're hoping that we show improvement again this next year with that. But there's other indicators in there, but that's all school report card related, and they're not gonna do a school report card, as we know of right now. So there's too much in flux, so, you know, it's probably the most important goal,
I agree.
but it's, you know, I don't have anything solid to say this is how we can gauge student achievement this year, you know, from my vantage point.
Well, let's revisit it then, and you and Trish would have a chance to come up with something.
Yeah, and whatever we use, we're not gonna look at it till the end of the year, but we just gotta find the instrument we're gonna use to gauge that. And it'll be something that we're using now, but hopefully.
So principals, will you be in the first, well, can you tell me please, do you have a plan yet for the initial beginning of the year benchmarking for where students are? Or is that something that?
Like you use Bass Bridge, so you'll just use Bass Bridge. What, do you guys use anything?
Fastbridge, Vera uses it.
Fastbridge.
Fastbridge, yep. We're taking on a new ELA resource this year that has a readiness screener that we would be able to use after the kids are back in the group to see where their gaps are from last spring. So we'll use that data to start out.
So my question was, do you have a plan yet about when you're going to do that, or are you waiting for teachers to
Now, all
come
the
back?
research that's out there right now is saying we have to get kids back in school, feeling comfortable, feeling okay and safe about being there before we try to hit like, you know, here, go take your test.
Okay.
Like, welcome back. Yeah, it's gonna look different, but we're still gonna care about you and this is a safe and good place for you to be. So, no, the short answer is not yet.
Yeah, they haven't been in school for 6 months.
Well, in the past, the elementary kids used that first day or two, and they did all that testing.
Assessment days, yeah.
And are you doing that this year?
No, we're not. We're being advised not to do that. Just talking about trauma, making sure we're caring for the SEL, the social emotional needs of our students. We do have social emotional screeners as well, but any of that screening, the first several weeks is we're being told stop.
Okay.
Take a breath, put your arms around these kids, make sure they know they're welcome and they're loved, and then valued, and then we'll get to that. And that is very important, but it's not going to be a valid assessment if we say, welcome back, here's your adaptive test.
Right.
So we will do that, and our new ELA curriculum is awesome for 6-12 because it has the screeners and then it has benchmarks. So we can screen for last year's missed learning and we can benchmark for this year's. So that's just one example of a place we can go for some good data to use comparatively.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that that's what Mark had talked about before too, when we were talking about this, is maybe you could use some type of gap measurement internally.
Absolutely. And there will be those.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have any questions about the goals? So would somebody like to make a motion to accept these
I'll
goals?
make a motion to accept the goals.
Is there a second?
Including number 3? Okay.
With the understanding maybe that 3 will be,
With the understanding that there could be an amendment to the student achievement goal, correct?
will be.
Will
There
be,
will be.
We
yeah,
bring it back
that
in
it will be
October.
expanded
The October work session.
by the October work session.
I'll second that.
I was waiting for the discussion portion, say, which one are we doing?
Any further, yeah, you're right, we should have had a motion before we discussed, sorry.
We discussed during.
Is there, any further discussion on this motion? Any other questions?
Tasia, read it back.
Yeah. Motion to approve the 2021 district administrator goals with the understanding that there's an amendment, will be an amendment to the student achievement goal by the October work session.
Perfect.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Advanced operations. Would anybody like to make a motion on any part of this?
Make a motion to approve 6A, B, 1 and 2.
I would like to discuss.
I'll second it so we can discuss it.
Okay. And then what would you like to discuss?
My only one was the public participation at board meetings.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought we were using it as a consent agenda. So my question about this, was really, do we wanna limit the amount of time that will permit people to call in or, submit audio, or within the body of this, or do we just want to bring it back when the COVID issue is in our rearview mirror? Because I think at that point, I think if people want to participate, unless they have an ADA accommodation type thing, that they can't physically be here, that they should really be here. So I don't want,
Can I ask a clarifying question here?
Yes.
So, you wanna make it so that we still encourage people, we want them in person. And that should be what we really want, but during this COVID, we can't have them in person. So you're just saying we wanna make sure that people understand we really would prefer they're in person.
Yeah,
After
and
COVID.
we could even, just put 2 words in there, during the COVID-19 restrictions, thank you. Any individual who is unable. So that it's clear, we're not really intending that to be forever. But it's up to the board.
I have a question on the audio portion.
Uh-huh.
So, do you mean audio as in calling in, or do you mean audio as in giving us an audio file?
Audio file.
So we
Because
are-
calling in would be
Except
remote. An audio file would be if they're unable to be present, either in person or remotely. A letter or an audio file could be attached to the agenda.
Okay,
We wouldn't play them or
Okay.
read them,
all right.
but they would be attached to the agenda, so it's open to the public. And they would be noted in the minutes.
Gotcha. Then I would just change the after audio form instead of from.
Right. Yeah,
And I guess with the way the times are moving, I understand that, but I feel like having this in there with or without COVID is relevant. Because people are going to things less and they're using technology more, so if they're gonna send an email that they want to be on there, it's still in there and noted in our public comment without it. People are gonna be doing it more.
Well, we allow board members to call in.
Well, the
versus
call-in's
being
different.
Being in person.
Yeah, and the call-in was different. This is just specifically for those who aren't able to call in and aren't able to come in.
Yeah,
So, just
realistically,
attach
how
it.
often is that gonna happen?
Right.
We're gonna have a uptick or.
and we can always bring policy back if there is.
We get a second on email.
Do we wanna put in there that the audio file won't be played at the meeting, it's just gonna be on the agenda?
What says such public comment shall be attached to agenda and noted in the minutes.
Okay, I just think if we didn't play it and someone was expecting it, I'm just anticipating that could be an issue, but.
We could explain that in the email though, the email response to them, where your comments will be noted in the minutes
That's good.
and not played.
Any further discussion on this policy? So we have a motion on the table and a second. I don't remember who made them. Tasia, you have it though, right?
Yeah, Bruce and Catherine.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And then, would anybody care to make another motion?
Make a motion to approve 6C, option 2.
Second.
Any discussion?
Right, Dave, there's no, we have a balance, so we need to.
So as we talked about last time, we're waiting to hear still from USDA if we can not have to make up a deficit by reduced prices from Fund 10, which would defeat the purpose. So my recommendation for right now is to approve option 1. We did confirm with DPI that once they hear from USDA for sure, if the answer is what we would like, where we don't have to make that up, we're allowed to change at that point in time. So just for communicating out and getting people prepared, I'd like to approve option 1. And if we get a good answer from USDA in the future, I'll bring that back to you to make the change to option 2 at that time.
That sounds good.
So Bruce, would you like to amend your motion?
To approve option 1?
Ah, suave, come on, guy. Yes.
And,
I will amend the motion.
No, second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would anybody care to make another motion?
So moved. To approve the fall reopening plan as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, sorry. In the fall reopening plan, is there gonna be anything for the people who want virtual on how to get that? Cause there isn't anything in there for the 40 parents who are looking at that to kind of say what their steps are going to be. It just talks about getting your teacher assignments.
So I can address that.
Yeah.
We have the surveys, we have the names, we have the email addresses, we have been in contact just at the level saying, we'll take it from here. I've had lots of conversations personally and via email. Right now, we're waiting for our site to be set up, and then we will send out the implementation steps. So right now, we're kind of in a standstill until we finalize numbers and finalize who, what, where, when, and then we'll send out something to that group. So we have the list all ready to go. Our principals all know what's going on. They're using that information. So yes, it's just not there yet.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the reopening plan is being sent out or being put online without that component in there might cause some anxiety to some people.
Oh, I can add a couple.
Yeah,
lines
that's
on that.
all.
You've got communication pieces, sure.
Yep, thank you.
Well, doesn't it say on the full-time distance learning instructional model that distance learning coordinator Brandon Berry is a resource?
Yeah, but it
So-
doesn't, like it says, you'll get this, go to Infinite Campus for this, do this for this, but it doesn't say for those people who are waiting for that, what they're going to
So
do.
Patty, are you talking about the flyers that we made that had all those, that information in it? Or are you talking about the slideshow
The
that?
slideshow,
Okay.
yep, that one,
I can add just a couple pieces of information on
just
it,
informational come out, just something as simple as that, because,
action stuff.
yep.
We are going to, if I can just add to that, we are gonna have a, informational letter that's gonna go to all those families as well, just restating kind of the responsibilities around distance learning, because it is not, everyone's cup of tea.
Mhm.
And it sounds like this is such a great, compromise, and yet there's some components that our parents will have to support this learning as well, especially at the K-5 level.
Yeah.
There's even a learning coach, because a K-1-2, especially student, is going to need an adult support at home. So we are sending that out as a final, to those families that indicated distance learning, as a final, okay, here's what, here's some things to remember as we move into this, because it's a semester commitment.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of flipping back to face-to-face right now, so one more push, so that may also help with that communication.
Cool.
What about the cost for this?
So I forgot, I missed a big chunk on this virtual piece from my report. And this might be a timely place to put this in right now, because it has to deal with the cost of what we're doing here. And we really need some input on the direction we want to go. So I don't know if you want to finish this. I don't think, it doesn't have a bearing on the opening plan, but I think it addresses what Bruce's question was right there about cost.
Okay.
So in the reopening plan though, it calls out using, calls out using ingenuity.
Right, and that's what I want to talk about, is the ingenuity costs.
So I was gonna say, if we're gonna approve it, we don't wanna have that.
Well, approving this document won't affect that piece, but this is another piece that answers the question you have about cost.
Okay.
This cost won't affect the reopening plan, so to speak.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about it right now before you vote on the reopening plan. I just don't think it's gonna,
Well, I think we probably should.
well, but really, again, the reopening plan doesn't, personally, I don't think it needs a vote, it's just more of an agreement. But, so, is it okay, do you want me to talk about this right now? Okay,
Please.
and I apologize, I was meaning to do this during my report here, but this is what we're stuck on right now. We spent quite a bit of time today trying to figure out how to staff the situation. We have 115 families that identified they wanted to go virtual, and that number is starting to drop. People are wanting to come back in face-to-face. So I think, Trish mentioned that Brandon's gonna put out a letter with expectations to the families. What we're thinking is that when people see this, we're gonna have more coming back. But when you look at 115 students or less, that's 4 FTE. And the cost of Edgenuity is what, about $1,700 a student per semester?
It varies that's for an elementary student.
Okay.
It's less for high school.
So basically, if we have 115 kids in Ingenuity, it's gonna cost us $179,000 by using their people for a semester. So this is about a $350,000 price tag for an entire year. Now again, this could change, then there's, that's on the outside. On the short side, if we use our staff to work with the Ingenuity curriculum, what have you, it drops down to like $400 a student, significant drop. But where I'm hung up on this is, we have 115 kids that right now, we'll use that number, that's 4 FTE. If we had 115 less students, we would have, 4 less staff members. What do we do with them? How can we use them creatively to do this distance or virtual learning? But the problem is, we've got about 40 kids in each building, or 35 in each building. It breaks up pretty pretty evenly. But we got licensure issues, and they don't all come out of one class. You know, you got 5, 9, 10, 15, like that. So that was what we worked on today, is how do we use our resources efficiently and effective to address this? And again, we're trying to hit a moving target again, because we know our numbers are dropping from the virtual choice to coming back in. My question to you is, you know, again, we try and staff it internally and do this with a, you know, a lower cost, or does that $350,000 price tag sound okay to you to say, no, we want to do Edgenuity, total, boom, let's do it? That's what I want to lay on a table, just to get some input.
I'm not clear on where the 350, because you said it's so much per student. Where does the
Per
350?
semester.
That's a big round number that Mark is using.
Right.
there.
So
So-
would you tell us the numbers per grade level?
Oh, per grade level, sure.
Because you said, did you say 1,700 per student for
At
elementary?
the K-5,
K-5 is
it's
1,700,
approximately 1,700.
and that's a
That's
semester.
with teacher support for 4 core classes and 2 encore classes, including things like music and such, and that's with their teacher support.
Okay.
So their teacher licensure, their teacher progress monitoring, their instruction. And at the elementary level, each grade level is assigned a teacher. So grade 3, it's grade 3 teacher, grade 4, grade 4 teacher. That's how it looks at the K-5 level.
So it's 1,700 a semester or a year?
Semester.
Okay.
Mhm. Does anyone else have the document?
So there's 112 total. There are 73 6th through 12th graders
How much do you
and
have?
39 kindergarten through 5th graders, currently as of today.
That number
and-
continues to drop.
And it's been dropping.
Mhm.
So we're at 112 total students. And it's not like there's 25 out of one grade level. It's
How much is-
7, it's 8, it's 10, it's 13.
That's our challenge.
And like our biggest class that I have in the middle school also has the greatest number of kids opting for distance learning, which I look at and go, great, my classes can be a little bit smaller then. Instead of 26, 27, they're 21, 22. That's awesome. So that's the challenge that we're facing right now is
What's
how
the
can we?
cost of 6 to 12?
612 with their teacher support, their licensure, so we meet all DPI guidelines. Same thing, 4 core, 2 electives, it's 1,500 a semester per student, if we use their instructional support and licensure. And all the parts that go with that.
And then what do we provide?
We provide setup, a liaison between enrollment, some counseling to make sure that they're okay, because if they're disengaged, then we jump back into the picture, that kind of thing. Brandon will also be doing check-ins with families based on need. We also have to do IEP
Or
support.
specialized instruction
Mhm.
based on their IEP.
And will we be providing the specialized instruction? Okay.
If we did that, if we went this way, we could potentially free up some of our teachers to help cover
Well,
if stuff happens.
as Sarah was saying,
How
what I
do you-
was excited about was getting our numbers down in the classroom so we can have more physical spacing.
Well, in a 3rd grade, how are you gonna free up 5, how are you gonna free up a teacher with 5 kids? You go from 20 kids in a class to 19 kids in a class, you're not gonna have a,
Right.
for a teacher.
That's the challenge, is how do we, you know, that plus licensure. And, you know, I agree, it gives some latitude to possible covering classes and things like that, but again, we just, today, that was the challenge today, is how can we use these, you know, these 4 FTEs in a way that, or, you know, like Sarah just said, it's gonna drop my numbers into classes to create more distancing. Is it worth that cost? And that's what I'm laying out to you. I mean, we have a cost to do that, or do we wanna, you know, work harder to try and, you know, drop that cost of ingenuity and use our people doing that?
I don't even think that's, I can't even imagine being able to come up with all the right licensures and have that covered. I mean, we're small. I don't even think that it's a choice.
Certainly easier at the elementary, middle school level, but yeah, at the high school level, it would be.
A nightmare.
And I, again, I'm just really excited about being able to create more physical distancing by having smaller numbers. And if our numbers in this distance learning program keep going down, we might not end up with
Yeah.
4 FTEs.
Right, and again, this was just discussion, I just wanted to know how you felt about this, knowing what we're up against here, you know, because we'll continue to work on this. This isn't something we have to decide tonight, but I just wanted you to know, you know, the two ends, the two extremes of what we're faced with right now. And, you know, again, that's the reason why we have the meeting on the 31st. You know, obviously, we'll have to solve this before then, but any last minute decisions will be made at that, you know, at that meeting.
Well, and these teachers, they have curriculum that's for distance learning. Everything is, it's a whole different ballgame than me just saying, okay, now I'm a 4th grade teacher and I'm gonna make all my lessons online. These people that are pros, this is what they do. And it's giving our families a really good product and a platform that was intended for distance learning, rather than just us trying to create it.
I have
It's
a
worth it.
question, though. When, the very beginning when we were talking about this, did we get those students back who were going to a different distance learning program? Are they gonna come to Somerset's this year?
We got a few.
Okay.
Some, to be honest with you, I didn't hear back from everybody, but a few that I heard back from that said, this is great to hear, thank you so much, but with the uncertainty of everything happening, we want to stay with the already established program we've already started in, so.
Yeah.
But we did have a few of that, so.
Well, but I just wonder how much ingenuity is staffing up. A bunch of new people do, but it could help us out.
Do we have any guarantees on numbers with Edgenuity?
The nice thing about Edgenuity, they told me that, I asked what is a typical caseload? I mean, it's like caseload, I mean, use it loosely, right? And they said typically at the elementary, they do 40 to 1, because it's not running like a whole group class. But they have access to teachers from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 6 days a week. So they can do online whiteboard sessions, they do online support. There's always someone available to answer questions, but their one go-to, this is kind of like the service, Katie, that you had talked about at a former board meeting on how would we do this. This is what they do. And that's why we need to get some strong numbers to them if we're going to use their instructional support, which was our initial intention, because we knew that our teachers are going to be so stretched right now. We are asking our teachers to start gearing up, and we've been doing this all summer. What would it look like if? You know, we keep doing the if, and it's a tough place to be right now. So, yeah, this is their service.
Any further questions or discussion? Do we need to amend the motion to take into account the extra information that Trish is going to add? Or can we keep the motion as it is?
We can keep it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to accept the reopening plan. We have a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Staffing concerns. I see Jody is here to help with questions. Mark, you
Right,
want
no, I'm
to-
just gonna let, you know, Jody's been in contact, we both have been in contact with Trevor, but she's been taking the lead on sifting through what we're proposing in these next 2 or 3 items here, so I'll just let Jody take it and run with it.
All right, so there's all kinds of different things happening. You know, we have leaves we can predict, which you see on the agenda, like 1-year leave of absence. Most FMLA we can predict, meaning pregnancy, things that we have notice for. However, if somebody gets sick with COVID and ends up in the hospital, that may be a FMLA leave. We can't predict at this point. So our discussion has been a lot on staffing concerns of all different kinds. Other districts are raising their daily sub rate, you know, to try and accommodate for that, or to kind of have, you know, that core group that's always interested. What I sent to you guys was information circling back to the posting we had for the full-time substitute teachers. At the July, I think it was 20th business meeting, we had gotten the okay to go ahead and post for those positions, but to come back and have a discussion on it. So that's where we're at today. And I sent through some costing information that Dave and I worked on using the long-term subcontract and benefits for those positions, so we could try to keep the costs down. And then Trevor has worked with me on writing the language that says for days in which work is assigned to you, basically. Because if we have students in the building and we need subs, we have those people here to work with them. If we go virtual, we may not need them. They would be notified that they won't be working that day, you know, won't be paid the daily rate. However, if we have 6 staff members that are our employees, this person may have to virtually be covering a class. So it gives us the latitude of 4 days worked. And it gives the supervisor the flexibility of, do I need you today to assign type of things. So that is our idea on how to try to cover some of these gaps we're gonna find throughout the year. And also knowing that sub rates, other places are going to be higher, our pool will be shrinking on, you know, on a daily basis. So, did anybody have questions on the costing or the proposal? Or I tried to lay it out, but email is hard.
You know, with that strategy of paying, you know, for what they work, you know, again, we'd like to go, I think we have one on the agenda for approval tonight, but I think we do have a couple more. You know, we talked about 3, and I'd like to go after those 3, because again, we're paying only for the time they're here, but the rate is up there where it's advantageous for them to commit to us.
What are you talking about? What are you referring to on the agenda? Something different, one mark.
I was talking about E, the staffing concern, and then the item below that, full-time substitute teachers.
Right, I'm sorry, the one right below it, which ties into this.
Yeah, so the full-time
Do
substitute.
we have a recommendation from you
No.
guys on that?
That one's not.
It said possible action, my recommendation was in the weekend update.
Well, before we said to put it out,
Oh.
to see if
See what we
anybody
got,
applied,
what we got.
see if we got people apply for it.
We had 14 applicants we interviewed last week, and we have
good.
3 very viable applicants that are all. that would-
school?
One for each school that would be interested.
So,
I would also say possibly, yes, they would be in each school, but worst case scenario,
Right,
we could
use them.
use them wherever we need
Right,
them.
so if you don't need somebody in the middle school, okay, we're sending you to the high school because there are 3 short today. However
Yeah.
that works.
So, but a home base of where you would probably check in with that secretary or, you know, your go-to person per building, to try and do that. So, but like I said, with the idea of instead of like a full year teacher contract, like we had done this the last time we did a full year sub, doing it on the long-term subcontract because of the cost savings and they aren't just paid for the year, whether there's work or not, so.
can I make a motion to approve 6E1, the 3 positions, I guess, and obviously the 2 people will be on the next agenda, but
It-
3 positions.
I think all 3, because the one was a different.
There would be 3
The one that's
people.
on, just to be clear,
Oh,
the
this one
one
on
on
the
the
agenda
agenda
is
tonight
a-
is a different
It's an
long-term
FMLA
substitute
one.
Yeah.
than the 3 that we're referencing now.
I'll second that. I tell you what, it's, the districts around us are gonna snap people up if we don't move.
Agreed.
And I love your plan of using a full, long-term substitute contract.
Mhm.
Thank you for all the work that you've done with Trevor and getting the language correct. And I am just thrilled that we had 14 applicants.
Yeah.
And they, like, because I had put the posting out there and whatever, I will tell you, my email's been like, have you done anything? Have you done anything? Like, there are people really excited to, like, get these positions, so, that's good for us.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would anybody care to make another motion?
I'll make a motion on item F, discontinuation of community education program.
Is that for good or just for this year?
I would say we do it for this year and then see where we're at.
Is there a second? And then we can have discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Patty Jewel? And then Roxanne asked the question
I'm
about.
sorry, that was not
So
a
you're, no,
turn.
that's all right. And,
I'm sorry. You guys can just tell me when I'm out of turn.
I apologize for answering you.
Should we specify in there that it's just discontinued for this year?
Or due to the pandemic.
Or due to the pandemic, just
Something
because
like
this looks like we're never gonna have it again? I don't know. It's probably just,
Well, the intent would be for this year, but, you know, so, we're playing in a field right now that almost every plan we make is really subjective to what happens with the pandemic.
Agreed, I think it's something we bring back.
Well, I'll just add then, until administration feels we should continue the program, or I don't know, like that.
Until further
Until
notice.
safe to do so.
I don't know,
Reevaluate June 2021.
Yeah,
something like that.
perfect. Gives us a date too to look at it.
Tasia, would you like to read back the motion?
Yeah, make sure you have the whatever in there.
Approve the discontinuation of the community ed program to be reevaluated at a date of June 2021.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would anybody like to make another motion?
I'll make a motion, elimination of, community education assistant athletic director position.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Questions or discussion, comment?
I just wanna say that I'm kind of disappointed that nothing's come forward on, you know, changing the responsibilities or the, certainly the pay rate, because we know that that was always an option as well, to keep somebody who has, worked very hard on behalf of our district. And I know, you know, you tend to, switch duties and responsibilities around depending on people's assets and, you know, their strengths, and so I'm just disappointed that it couldn't have been done in this case. Because, you know, I agree, of course we can't do community ed, but I disagree that we couldn't use, this position in probably a lot of variable ways this year. So.
And I want to thank Jody for the memo. I wish you would have gotten that before it was on the agenda for the last meeting. because it would have provided a lot more insight than what we had going into it weeks ago. Thank you.
So if we eliminate this position, we approve this one, does that mean we're adding another position, or is it just the elimination?
This is just
This
the
is just
elimination.
anything we're
This is
adding?
just dealing with the elimination, and, you know, to Katie's point, you know, there's always gonna be some opportunity coming up that may engage some type of, you know, employment.
I don't think we really have the ability to tell you can't eliminate a position. And you know, when I thought about that, I don't think we have that ability to tell you can't. I mean, I think we have the ability to approve creating new positions and stuff like that. I just don't know if we have that ability, so I'm not even sure if this is an appropriate item that we should be voting on. I don't honestly know, but,
I would agree with you, that's why we didn't go into this depth with it last time. I didn't.
Okay.
But, again, you know, it's how we got here.
Well, fiscally, I agree. It's just because of, there's people involved, it hurts.
Mhm.
and there are different ways of doing that.
I hear you.
I guess with the office staff we have at the high school now, is Trent gonna get the support he needs? Or you need the support you need? People that we have there currently?
I mean, if I'm being honest, if there's an opportunity to reallocate it for support that's designated specifically for athletics and activities, I think that would be obviously very welcome.
And before, I think we were talking, there were 3 people at the high school, including Melita when it was her position. We still have the 3 office staff currently at the high school, right?
Yes, we have, yes.
So, I don't know what they do, I mean, the hours and time, we break that up, but
I think another thing we have to keep in mind is we don't even know this year if we're gonna be able to do, how long we'll be able to have athletics and activities.
I feel very grateful we had it for 3 years, because it was only to be a real short-term piece.
Can I just ask if, I guess I'm just trying to think of how we can keep such a knowledgeable person in the district with her experience and history with families in this district. Is it possible to sit down, like maybe her and Mark and Trent and the principals that might need help in their schools and rewrite her, come up with a plan that might work to retain her? I don't know, even a lot of the public has reached out just saying that they're disappointed, they'd like to see this person stay in the district. And I'm kind of just speaking on behalf of those people that reached out. She sent us an email, she's willing to renegotiate duties and salary. I think that's fair and opens up room for discussion. Is that something that could possibly be done? I don't know. I know that we have that position, the office aide. Are there some of those duties and that we could just seamlessly have somebody with experience just flow through to the next year instead of having to train somebody new? I just think the fall is gonna be, who knows, it's gonna be extremely busy and a lot of perhaps extra duties that might come up, and having that knowledge and experience would be valuable to our district. I'm just wondering if a conversation can be had, if it's something that could be considered.
I wasn't aware of any email that you guys have had, because just haven't had that communication, you know. anything's possible, but, you know, you wanna keep this as clean as possible. The position has run its course, it can end. You know, there are more efficient ways of using these dollars, and the last conversation I had, you know, there's other positions that this person could come into, you know, if they wanted to. But again, you know, this position has run its course. It really has, and cost effectively, I can't justify it. I really can't. But value to the district, sure, but in the right position at the right price.
And those positions should always be posted, and people should be applying for them.
Have we ever, though, in the history of the district, reassigned duties and had somebody transition into them? And then wrote the job description later, or just adjusted the job description and didn't post it? I'm just curious if that's ever happened.
Well, anytime that I'm sure that's happened, but we've always tried to,
Right.
you know, you create a position, you post it, and you post it with a job description.
With the position elimination, which fiscally, I get it, there's gonna have to be communication because without the support that you're gonna have now, there's gonna be a lack of communication that we've been used to as parents for the past 3 years of students. Cause I mean, I sent an email asking a question, does my kid have a physical, and I get an answer in an hour. So because we're used to it, we're gonna have some sort of campaign to say, hey, we're gonna have some communication there. And not go into details or anything, but it's just going to have to be something, so we're not going to be like, they're not talking to me now, because it is gonna be something that parents are going to say when we're so used to having that instantaneous communication. Just a word of advice.
Is there somebody who will be assigned to handle that type of duty? One specific person that name can be made known to parents?
Yeah, I mean, like, just like we have right now, where we have, on our website, we have kind of who the contact people
Right.
are for various things, we would identify that.
Okay, thank you.
Been spoiled.
Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose. I just don't think it's ours to vote
Okay. All right, so motion carries. Letter H, letter of appointment language. Who would like to?
This
Jody
one,
will address that.
Yeah, also information sent out in the weekend update. We had talked at a meeting that the board was looking for possibly, if we go to virtual or remote and we have people, support staff, not under like teacher contracts, not admin, but everybody else. Our hourly people, or salaried people, but just the letter of appointment staff, to possibly make a list of positions or something that those people, you know, we would identify that no work, when there's no work assigned, you wouldn't be paid. In thinking through it and trying to envision different scenarios, I was thinking, well, we can try and classify that, but what if we say special ed aides? Okay, I'm just using like a group. But only the middle school and high school go virtual, and we have elementary. Now you have classified a group across the board, and that doesn't fit because you're going to still need some people. So instead of doing it by classification or job, adopting the handbook amendment, as I sent to you, drafted by Trevor, that outlines what that looks like. And so that would be, you know, communicated by the supervisor, we're going remote, we're in shutdown, whatever it might be, and that there's not work there. So Trevor had said our letters of appointment basically say right now, there's no anticipation of pay for no work. But he did agree that it's very advantageous for us to have a very detailed plan as to what this looks like, because our handbook, when we look at it, it talks about furlough for budgetary reasons. Well, COVID may not be a budgetary reason if we have, full funding and that stuff, it may not fall under that. Layoff, we look at the language in there, you have to give at least a 30-day notice. Well, we may be out and back within 30 days. So this language says, exactly what would happen. And so this is our first discussion and look at it. If you want to approve it as is, you can. If you have questions, I can take them back and ask Trevor on them.
I like the language.
I'm sorry, what, Katie?
Where's the language?
Well, it was attached to the weekend handout, update, but it's also on the handout I gave.
Is it on the other side of your
It's the
computer?
back page appendix,
There it is.
work availability during a pandemic.
And this is exactly what we already got in the.
This is what I sent out in the weekend update, but I wanted you to have a hard copy in case anybody wanted to take notes, look at it.
I thought it was very well done.
Me too.
The only question I would ask is, with what happened in Iowa recently, I'm wondering if we should make it, if we should use the word pandemic rather, and perhaps, I don't know, natural disaster or something, I don't know. Because
If it's not COVID, it might be something else.
Right.
And it could be more generic. And generic is, more general.
Or could you say work availability during a shutdown?
Well, and, I mean, whether that's shutdown or virtual learning or whatever it might be, we can definitely change the language that way. And it is written in here that at any point we can go to our layoff or we can go to our formal furlough policy, but it might be happening so fast that it's an email from, well, not, like a communication saying, we all need to go remote, you won't be reporting to work on Monday, there won't be any work for you, or, it may be that it's, we're going remote, but we really need you to do this, or we need you in the building. And my one example to you was like the health aides that we're hiring. I know we had talked about student contact only days. In my mind, that means in the building. But what if we are having a big case outbreak and public health needs a lot of help doing tracing and contacting families, and those would be key people for us. So it would truly be, if there's a need, you're working. If there's not, you wouldn't be, and there's no expectation for pay.
And we'll need people to staff food service, delivery, and,
I mean, there's just,
it's
it
very
gives us
situational.
Way more flexibility.
flexibility, we have an outline plan, and everyone would know what to expect. What we would need from the board is, how do we want to communicate it?
There's also no notice. It doesn't say, hey, we'll give you as much advance notice as possible, both when we're gonna tell you 0 hours and when we call you back. So are the expectations that the employees are just supposed to wait for a phone call from the Somerset School District every day to see if they're gonna be called back the next day?
Well, if we go into a shutdown or a remote, there would be communication from the supervisor telling them, the anticipated plan. As we saw in April, we went, or March, I'm sorry, whatever month it was, week by week, and it kept extending the shutdown, so we wouldn't necessarily know going right into it. It does say if there's vacation or personal time, they can substitute pay. If there's work assigned,
About notice, So what I'm also thinking is we as a district should make sure that we get all of the stuff in writing. Emails, you know, if we're going to have different people, you know, if you have different principals saying, okay, I don't need you, you know, next week because X, Y, Z happened, a copy of that should go to Jody or HR or somebody, so
Yeah.
that people are tracking the communications between the employees and the principal. That's a big recommendation.
Yeah,
But
it
I
could
think
be
that's
a
fine.
Google communication shared to the people, employees, with HR copied on it, you know, so then we have a list of everybody that received it and I get noticed right away, which would be attached in an email.
I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
know, I just hope it'll be tracked.
It will be
That's up
tracked.
to you guys, but
And then timesheets would obviously still be the way we would know what we're paying and what we're not, which would match up with the obviously supervisors are signing them, would match up with the communication. My hope is we never have to use this.
oh, we will.
Your direction was, let's be prepared and not reactive. So,
Can these people apply for unemployment or not?
Yes.
Yep.
I did ask
So-
Trevor that question because we have said we don't have work for you. Now, if
Right.
it's, we're closing the building for the week to clean, because we had so many cases, public health says you have to do whatever, and they're back, there may not be a
We don't
need
have
to
a-
file for it, you know, if it's a quick turnaround, but it might be indefinitely, you know, so, but yes, they can.
Is there an issue with actually just laying them off? Does that mean that the position we'd have to repost?
Well, the problem with laying them off is we have to give them 30-day notice.
Is that
So-
a district thing or is that?
That's in our employee handbook, so yep, we have to give them a 30-day notice with our layoff process. Furlough you can do quicker, but only for budgetary purposes, the way our handbook is
I
written.
thought they come get unemployment on furlough.
But we could change our handbook, just like we're doing now.
Yeah, I think you can.
I think it's also different right now, like if you are out of work due to COVID.
Yeah. So. Yeah,
Doesn't matter for the.
but, so,
How do you think they're gonna react when they get this?
well, I think they've all watched the board meeting and said that, well, maybe not all watched it, but there's been communication anticipating that this is a very real thing, that we're not gonna continue to be paid when there isn't work. And people have been asking, they just want some direction and want to know what to expect. We may see some resignation, we may see some people saying, well, it's what I would expect, it's what I would anticipate. Most employers aren't paying you not to work, so, but I think what the communication would need to be is something that goes to everyone. And it could be like a Google form where all the language is linked, they acknowledge it by their email address, so we know everybody's received it. But I'm sure it won't feel good, but
I don't know, it's a crappy time. We just laid off a bunch of people at my company. I mean, it's not anything to do with workers, it's just, they don't have the work, can't have the people. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a crappy
Okay,
deal.
then we should go back to the coaching.
We already established
I know.
coaching. I don't know why you go back to the coaching when we
I
already
just-
said if you
I
don't
just
work,
said-
you don't get paid this year.
Um,
We've already updated that. So last year, we paid everybody. That was
But I
standard
trying
across
to
the
get
board.
Consistency from the.
Yeah, we are. If you're not working, you don't get paid as a coach.
Well.
We've already addressed that
that's
for
not
this
true.
year.
That's not true.
Yeah, it is. We already approved that one.
this does, you know, like I said, outline everything, and Trevor wrote it, you know, we brainstormed together, but it comes from him, so,
Tricia, I don't remember, did we make a motion on this yet?
No.
No. Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
6.
H, letter of appointment language.
Anybody willing to second?
I'll second.
Can I make a clarifying question? Or
Sure.
ask a clarifying question? Just for Jody's purpose, do you want the motion to be to approve letter of appointment language, or this is an appendix for the handbook? Or does that not impact what you will need it to do?
What do you want, Jody?
An appendix to the handbook,
Okay.
communicated either by the board or district administrator, like, we will send this out to.
I will communicate it, so be, that way it comes.
Okay,
Yeah.
an appendix to the handbook regarding work availability during the shutdown.
And who was the second?
Me, Patty.
I do.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay, motion carries. Letter I, district logo.
Yeah, that's mine. I'm not looking for action unless you really wanna take action on this. But as I explained in the weekend update, you know, we've had so many different versions of logos, even since I've been here, from bridges to S's to the word Spartan to the white Spartan head. We've been looking probably for the last year or so for a logo that represents the district. And we finally got one that administratively we all like, wow, we like this. But it has to be vetted somehow. You know, we have to get it out there. And so these masks we've gotten and some of these COVID things that we're doing with stickers and what have you, we're putting that logo on it. And what I'm suggesting is we kind of listen to see what the vibe is, if it's something people like or they don't like, if we have to go back to the drawing board. But we have to vet it somehow. I don't think we can just sit here and say, this is what it's gonna be, because you're gonna have mad alumni, you're gonna, just community people. So again, this is on here, we're putting it on the masks we're buying just to get it out there, and so we just listen to see what people think. And if it's something that flies in another month, maybe.
I vetted it with a second grader. I did. I took her over to the baseball field and I took over the one that you gave us, the copies, and I showed her both of them and said, what do you think is the difference? I said, look at the skin color. And she said,
Wow.
oh, well, this one, the new one, she said, will make everyone feel included. Wow. And that was from a 7-year-old. So she knew right away that that was gonna make a difference.
And
So-
this new one plays right into our equity work also. So again, it's nothing against the old.
Well, which one are we, so we have an S, and then we have a black and white, and then we have a color, and then we have another color. So I'm just wondering,
Printing purposes.
which one are we approving? An S as a logo, or are we approving the superhero logo?
We're not approving any, but we're gonna
Well, I mean,
use,
are we-
we're gonna use the,
Discussion.
I believe the colored one we got on, is that the colored one that?
We got copies of it, remember?
Yeah.
Right, no,
Well, it's attached in here too.
but I mean, so I just wonder, what's the S? Is that something that we're doing too, or not?
I don't know where the S came from.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, we're
different.
on something, like, the only thing I have a problem with is the S, because how are you supposed to draw that? You can't do the 6 lines and the triangles,
Good one.
ruins it for everyone.
So if you look at that,
The
you see
S
how
is
the S
added
is
there.
embedded?
Right.
in the logo?
Yep,
So it
I
can be
love
pulled
that.
out and put on a baseball cap or on a polo, and the
Just-
Spartan's
just-
word
okay,
can
just
be
the
pulled
S.
out.
Just the S.
got
So
it.
it becomes all one
That's
big
Big Boy's
piece.
logo?
That makes sense?
Any other,
Well,
go ahead. Any other questions or comments?
I have not had positive feedback from that one, but that's just me.
Can you put it in the scoop? And would that be easier to get feedback if you just throw it
Well,
out there?
we'll vet it out. I mean, it's gonna be seen. So again, if we come back together in a month and it's not what we want, we'll go back to drawing board. But the issue right now is, we're holding off on a couple things in the buildings because we don't have a logo that, we need an official logo. So like in our gymnasiums and on our little placards for rooms, different things where there's usually a school emblem on. We're holding off on those things because we don't want to have to redo them until we have our emblem, approved. So again, what we're doing right now is just trying to vet this one.
Any further questions or comments? All right, so we will wait for feedback on that one. Consent agenda,
I'll make a motion to approve A, minutes 1 and 2, B, board bills, C, personal update 1 and 2.
Second.
any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. General information.
Don't we have a meeting on the 14th,
In September?
September 2? Isn't that the annual meeting?
I believe so, yeah, it
We
should be
gotta put that
listed
on
there.
I don't typically include that as a board meeting just because it's our district annual meeting.
So on the 14th, it will only be the annual meeting?
I think Dave, you needed,
I did put in weekend update.
Yes, I saw that.
I'm still waiting to hear back on the final timeline, but I may request the briefest of meetings just to formally go through the resolution process for renewing our line of credit.
Great.
So I will keep you informed.
Once around the table, Catherine, would you have anything? Bob?
I do not.
Bruce?
David, can you give us a financial update on our preliminary budget with all of the positions and costs that we've had to incur recently?
Are you looking for COVID specific?
Well, I just mean, we've approved 3 substitute positions, we've approved health aides, we've approved 300,000 in ingenuity costs for the year.
So I'm working on that right now, that I have to get the budget to the paper in advance to be published 10 days in advance of the annual meeting budget hearing. But that's a lot of the work I'm doing right now, actually, and that'll be the product of it, it'll show up there. And I could highlight specifically all these new costs for COVID. And at the same time, I'm trying to get in the wrap up for last year. Audit is still ongoing. It's going smoothly, but it seems like it's taking a little longer because it's all remote this year, it's all virtual. So my tentative plan is to try to get that Q4 budget to actual, hopefully for the 31st meeting. Possibly with, that might be something that is finalized over that weekend, and then we go through it on the Monday. And then get the budget talked about at the next opportunity, which will be the budget hearing. Unless you want to add another meeting in the interim. But that, just as far as getting one piece done and then the next piece done, that's how that timeline works out.
Yeah, I was just looking for an update because I know we've added, and I know that when we approved the preliminary budget, it was even, so we didn't add any raises for any staff.
Yep, and we're still, the revenue is still the big question mark for us. It's still very much unknown. And I think once we look at what happened last year, we'll feel hopefully okay about where we're at now, even if we don't know for sure what the revenue looks like this year and beyond. We may have to make adjustments in the future, but last year ended up okay for us.
Is there any COVID relief that I know it's a revenue thing, but is there any COVID?
So far to date, there is a small amount for us. The first part, the CARES part, was based on how Title I is calculated for us. So for us, it was a small amount, it was $40,000. There's still more discussion and more possible help in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Katie? No. Roxanne?
I just want to end, for me, by saying that I understand the elimination of positions, absolutely. But if this person that we've been talking about does leave the district, I think that's a huge loss to our district, and I wanna say thank you to her for everything she's done, because that's a lot of experience and expertise walking out the door.
Absolutely. Patty Jo?
Make sure we get the if we meet for policies in the next 2 weeks before our work session, to get those that we need to look at. So that's one thing I wanna make sure we do. Thank you guys for doing all this stuff and getting this all ready, because it seems to be a lot. It seems to be a lot. I know, my kids were super excited to go to cross country today, and they had a lot of fun, and they're really, really pumped to be out there, and that was really nice to hear, because I was worried, because they didn't do anything all summer. And then I also just wanna thank Jody for doing the extra work. That's right.
Let's see, I had a CISA meeting, and they talked about the CARES package, and there is somebody at CISA who is willing to help the individual school districts. I imagine you've already been contacted about that?
For the CARES part, I think we're doing all right.
Okay. And at that time, the meeting was August 13th, at that time, the $6.9 million cut to education from the state budget, DPI has taken that on totally, and they're telling us that there will be no impact to state aid to school districts.
Huh.
Subject to change. But at that point in time, DPI was taking the entire cut.
What, made a joke?
They also talked about lanyards for, you guys talked about lanyards for all the kids. One of the school districts is making it so the elementary kids, you guys already have that? So the masks are connected so they don't drop on the floor and all that? Okay. And I saw on our district website, you guys have the substitute teachers. They talked about that at the CISA meeting as well, about the huge increase they've had in people applying to be substitute teachers and the training, and they've added more training, and I see you've got 2 dates in September on our website to address that. Our long-distance coordinator, Brandon Berry, are we looking for a replacement for him in the high school media center?
We're going to absorb his, well, he'll be based out of the high school. That'll still be his home base, so he'll still be doing, I would say, a piece of that work, but in terms of looking at some supervision and some other things that Brandon did, we're going to absorb that in the building. Mhm.
All right, I think that is it. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Motion adjourned at 8:30.